Going to be a busy summer between the New York Red Bulls and Toronto FC. They will see each other this weekend in MLS regular season play, next month in Leagues Cup. Gareth, I was talking about Toronto the other day. Thanks for coming on, first of all, and had said up until this point, I would say they've been a nice surprise in Major League Soccer, how they've been able to kind of turn things around, rebound a little bit. You might have a completely different take being with the team and following them day in and day out. But give me a state of the union about halfway through the season.
Yeah, I mean, they've been much better than I thought and much better, much quicker than I thought. They were an absolute disaster last season. And then with John Herdman coming in, I think there were significant question marks how this team would fare, whether it could get a buy-in from key players. And there was so much change just in terms of the overall squad and contributors and the way that they played that I think they surprised some teams out of the gate. There was a real commitment, a real grind. The team dug in and really caught some opponents, maybe a little bit by surprise. But that's kind of tapered off here over the last 5, 6 weeks where they've just won one match out of their last seven. It's really the second half of games that have really punished them. I think that they understand what their plan A is and going forward and what that looks like. But as games change within them and other teams, their opponents adjust, I'm just not sure if TFC are there in terms of their growth as a team as of yet. So there's some serious work to do just in terms of rebuilding the squad, but also how they play game to game as well.
Obviously, challenging week for most teams in Major League Soccer. This the back end of three in a week. New York was in Canada on Wednesday. Toronto a midweek game as well. Factor that in with the international duty is and I'm not asking for inside information, you know that, but the lineup I would think for both teams becomes a little bit of a question mark going into Saturday. Who's available? Who feels good after a midweek game? All the heat during the course of this past week. It might be a little bit of a mash squad for both teams.
Yeah, I can't see too many changes coming to Toronto FC. They are missing some key players due to international duty. Sean Johnson, the goalkeeper, is off at Copa America with the U.S. Richie Larea and Jonathan Osorio are with Canada as well. And a really promising rookie who's been playing on the left-hand side of the 3-4-3, Tyrese Spicer. He's out for weeks with a back injury. And there's a couple other long-term absentees, but the players that you saw on Wednesday night against Nashville, I think it would be very similar to the team that plays Saturday. Quite frankly, some of the depth of this team just isn't good enough and are going to have to be replenished or changed come the offseason. So I think that this is a group more or less that John Herdman likes and prefers. The game really changed when Lorenzo Insigne came out at around the 62nd minute mark. And I think that was to preserve him a little bit. He calls him his Ferrari. He needs to be managed. He's dealt with a ton of injuries in Major League Soccer, and him coming out early in that game has to be Herdman having eyes for the weekend tie at Red Bull Arena. So I can't see too many changes really.
Tell me the last couple of games specifically. Both have been at home. The loss to Chicago, the loss to Nashville. Eye-opening in a way, like, hey, we've got more work to do, to your point of roster depth probably needs to be increased over the summer transfer window and or into the offseason.
Yeah, the frustration's finally setting in. Herdman's a manager that's typically used to those international windows, high output, get results right away and get out of town. But now all of a sudden with the games coming thick and fast and when things aren't going his way, I think you feel that tension, that pressure within the group. They had about a 10-minute huddle on the field post-match after losing to Nashville on Wednesday night. And the loss to Chicago on the Saturday before, it was 4-1. Herdman said it was his lowest point in 30 years of coaching men's, women's, youth football. So I think the message has been delivered. Perhaps it just needs to be toned down a bit. Like the group just needs to take a breath. I kind of feel like they're playing with a little bit too much pressure on their shoulders, but over the course of an entire Major League Soccer season, we know this, it's really very much a marathon, and you just need to keep the big picture in mind. And they're still in a playoff spot or right there and about. So I just don't think that there's need for panic here. But what's crushed them, Matt, is really the second halves. They haven't won in their last 5 games, but in those 5 games, they've either been level or led at halftime in each and every one of them. In those 5 games, they've gone on to concede 11 goals in the second half. I mean, that's just not sustainable. And you can question whether it's mentality, whether it's fatigue, whether it's pressure, whether it's tactics. It's probably a little bit of all of that. So, and that for me plays into the Red Bulls' hands this weekend because they're an excellent second half team. They wear teams down. So Toronto FC are going to have to be ready for that, because if the same output, if the same game plan or game model plays out on Saturday, they could be in some real trouble in the second half of that game.
Second of an All-Canada week for the New York Red Bulls, Montreal this past Wednesday, Toronto coming up on Saturday. Gareth, appreciate you hopping on, giving us a couple minutes. I know exciting times right now. I'm sure most of the country was paying attention to the Canadian-Argentina game last night. Should be fun during Copa America. A lot of players in and out from Major League Soccer, and look forward to this one against you guys on Saturday.
Thanks, pal. Can't wait. Should be a good one.